Welcome back, guys. This one very special. It's been a while since I've reviewed a single car. As some of you may know, I was responsible for leading McLaren design from the get-go, from the start of McLaren Automotive back in 2008. And it's always interesting to see how the family is doing, go back and see how they've moved forward with the design language. Today, I'm going to pick up on their very latest design, the McLaren Artura. Knowing that McLaren only does sports cars, I want to evaluate the design. Have they kept the themes? Have they progressed? Have they revolutionized it? Let's get into it. The McLaren Artura. First of all, before I say anything, the name really doesn't hit me right here. I think Artura is a fuddy-duddy kind of name, sorry to say that, but it doesn't really mean anything to me. Perhaps they're playing into the Britishness of the name King Arthur. It's perhaps a Romanized version of King Arthur. Who knows? At first impact, when I stand and look at the car for the first time, I haven't seen it in real life, so sometimes your opinions can change. But my first vision, my first visual contact with a car leaves me feeling pretty good. I think they've handled this project in an excellent way, the design of it. It's an evolutionary design, it's nothing revolutionary. I was there during a phase when we were developing the sports cars, the supercars, and the hypercar themes. Obviously, we were playing off of a very similar chassis for all the vehicles. Engines were being slightly tuned a bit differently. We tried to keep a certain look based on that same platform that would identify the car for its segment, for the sports car, supercar, and hypercar segment. As designers often try to do, is to simplify the designs, make it much more cohesive. And in that sense, the Artura really hits it on the bullseye. It really takes the 570S and takes it up a notch. It just makes it better, more cohesive, and simpler. And I think they're showing the Italians a real lesson in design with this specific model here. But I think the Artura is a fantastic statement, a great design for McLaren. Now, when we're looking at the car from the front, and I've always said it, that three-quarter front says everything about your first impression of a vehicle. It's kind of like coming kind of face-to-face with a person for the first time. We see that new evolution of the McLaren headlights, that intense, unique look, that face that McLaren has where they take the headlights and they move them back into the eye socket almost. Perhaps that black that starts after the body color that leads into the headlight on the body surface is a bit too far forward, because what it does is it makes that black socket, that eye socket look really recessed. The eyes typically is where you create the emotional perception of the vehicle, and so perhaps this car shouldn't look overly aggressive, at least in this segment here. I like a lot that wave that they've put into the wing just below the headlight that sweeps from the front up and towards the back, almost like a soaring wing profile, and that works very nice. I do not like that light tube that they've inserted just below it. It really jives with the curvature above it, so I think it would have been nicer to follow that upward sweeping wing line with the integration of this light tube here, so that would have given it a bit more cohesiveness to that area. I love the McLaren logo. I know there's a lot of critique here and there about what it looks like and all this and that, but for me, I love the shape of an organic McLaren logo, and I would have put that on the bonnet because it's so unique. The badge that we've always used or often have used on the front of the bonnet of a McLaren, the square one where you have McLaren written in it. If you don't know the car, you have to walk up and read it and understand, okay, this is a McLaren. But that logo being so unique, if you just have it in its own area, setting, position, you recognize it immediately. If you know about cars, that's a McLaren. Now, if we start to turn to the side of the car and we hit that profile shot, that is amazing. I love it. I absolutely really feel that they've nailed a great side view profile shot of this vehicle. The right amount of front overhang, the right amount of rear overhang. I love that center line. I love how McLarens have a very fast windscreen. This one is very far forward, so we almost have what we call that cab forward approach, which is fantastic. But again, the top of the peak of the center line over the driver's head, slightly in front of the driver's head, does wonders for a shape. I think it really gives it that emphasis of moving forward. And then it's a nice slope after that down into the rear of the car. Works very well. For me, in this day and age, I think what we're looking at over the front wheel is a bit too busy. Now, how can that be improved? We need to get air out. If they're going to need to have that air vent there, I would recommend getting rid of the two fins and just having a much cleaner, much more beautiful air outlet in that area there, just to keep it as cohesive with everything else on the body side as possible. Another thing that I wish they would have picked up, and I've always emphasized it, I think it works really well, the side mirror mounted on the door. Now, you might not be thinking that there's anything wrong with it, but just imagine this. You have the wing support, the mirror wing support on the door, and then you have the head cap of the mirror smack in front or in view of the greenhouse. How much better would it be if that blob of mirror cap in body color was actually black? It would just blend right into the glass surface and disappear and not look like some kind of antenna add-on or whatever. What I don't get is that little blip of highlight light catcher that we have just in front of the rear wheel below that main light catcher there. I don't see any reason for that. It doesn't lead to anything in the back. I would eliminate that, clean up the body side, since we're talking about clean design. I love that's, how else can you say it, sensual line of the top of the fender sweeping down underneath the A-pillar, back over and into these haunches, these hips that are just so powerful all the time on McLarens. You can see that this is a mid-engine supercar. They've really perfected the art of creating an amazing profile on all the McLarens. Now, the side intake is a strong element on this car. Typically, McLarens have been very subdued in this area in the sense that they're not such a visible part on the side of a car, but they've done it in such a sculptural way that it just makes you want to rub your hand along that surface and push in, follow in, and see how deep your hand can actually reach into that area. It's a very seductive piece of design. I think it could have been a little bit softer as it goes up, and where it reaches the top of the fender could have been softened a little bit, so you have that transition of a hard radius to a softer radius. That maybe would have helped it to flow around easier on the eye. And then as we move to the rear view of this car, that for me is the money shot. This is stunning. Now, horizontal tail lamps are now becoming a thing, I guess, but does that have a lot of character? No. And which is one of the cars in history now that does? Well, the McLaren P1. It's an updated version of the McLaren P1 rear end, but in effect, there is no rear end on this car if we're supposed to be speaking about body color coming around the back. And they've just inserted these little blips of color as taillights. Now, what I would have done is to take home that signature, that light signature that P1 has, and just would have outlined that beautiful shape that they have going on the end of the car, the one that marks the end of the body color. I think the signature would have been much more unique, much more McLaren, and that gives you an incredibly unique identification and recognition of the car from behind. The exhaust pipes on here, what's very interesting is the placement of the exhaust pipes. Now, if you're walking behind this car, you're gonna get blasted with some hot air coming out of the exhaust pipe. Nice position, engineering-wise, an excellent position, because it just means that the exhaust pipe, the tubing, is much shorter. It doesn't have to do a spaghetti, treatment to get out of the bottom of the car. It basically is a straight shot from the manifold straight back, and you're saving weight. That rear glass, you might not know it until you actually see the car in real life in front of you, but it's actually concave, which means it kind of bends in the hollow direction. And that, my friends, comes almost literally directly off the theme of the Ferrari Dino, which is one of, ask a designer, one of his favorite cars. 246 Dino has to be in that list. So let's face it, this car is all about performance. But if I have to add one little bit of criticism to the rear end, for me, and you guys know how I feel about it, it's that mesh. Well, what if somebody comes along sticks their hand in there and burns their hand on the exhaust pipe or something. But those are precisely the kind of people we have to eliminate from the gene pool. And I do not like mesh, because why do you need mesh? It's not a door to the car. It's not trying to keep people from getting inside your car. It's just blocking hot air. Now, people are probably saying, okay, you can criticize all you want, but what would you do? Well, what would I do on the mesh? I would probably turn it into a prison cell. Vertical blades mounted in that area, you would still have a great flow of air coming straight out, but that would protect your hand from going in, or not my hand, and you would still have a beautiful, clear vision forward into the engine bay. So, closing thoughts, stunning design, absolutely stunning design. And again, I'm just being as honest as I can. I love the design. It does look progressive. The result of the effectiveness of the design of this car, the technology of this car, the engineering of this car is the form that you're looking at here. If I have to give it a number in terms of design out of 10, I would give it a solid 8.5, simply not higher, because I see it as an evolution, a refinement of the 570S. And in that sense, if it's a refinement, it means that anything you do as a designer, you should be able to improve upon it in the next go you have at it. So if it's a refinement, it means that there's another stage up there that can take the refinement even further. So thanks for watching. I know this one's a little bit controversial. There are the haters and lovers. I feel strongly that this car is stunning with a little bit of room for improvement, mostly details in terms of volumes, proportions, absolutely spot on, nailed. So let me know what you think about the Artura, if it's Latin, in the comments below. And I look forward to reading them. You know I love reading your comments, and I'll see you again soon in the next episode.